The night wrapped the city in an inky blackness, with the unyielding rain creating a melancholic symphony against the roof of Robert's car. He steered his elegant black sedan through the drenched streets, the headlights casting fleeting reflections on the numerous puddles. The windshield wipers struggled rhythmically to fend off the relentless raindrops, but Robert's thoughts were far away, lost in the daunting anticipation of the pivotal presentation he had ahead. This meeting was more than a mere appointment. It was a critical juncture that could potentially transform the future of his global business. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. As he navigated through the storm, Robert's mind replayed every detail of his presentation. Each slide, each point of discussion, meticulously prepared to persuade and impress his partners and investors. The stakes were high, and the pressure felt like a tangible weight pressing down on him. He knew that this moment could either catapult his business to new heights or bring everything crashing down. The rain intensified, pounding harder against the car, matching the rhythm of his racing heart. The city, usually bustling with life, now seemed subdued under the relentless downpour. The streets were nearly empty, save for a few brave souls hurrying to their destinations, seeking shelter from the storm. Robert glanced at the clock on the dashboard, noting he had just enough time to make it to the office. Despite the chaos outside, he found a strange solace in the drive, a moment of solitude before facing the boardroom filled with expectant faces. As he approached a red light, his car idled, the wipers continuing their relentless battle. He took a deep breath, trying to center himself, reminding himself of his capabilities and the preparation that had gone into this moment. His thoughts wandered briefly to his family, the support they had shown him, and the sacrifices they had made. Their belief in him fueled his determination. The light turned green, and Robert accelerated, the car cutting through the night. He could see the silhouette of the office building in the distance, a beacon of light amidst the darkness. With each passing moment, his confidence grew, bolstered by the knowledge that he was ready, that he had done everything possible to ensure success. Finally, he pulled into the parking lot, the rain still pouring down. He gathered his notes, took one last deep breath, and stepped out into the storm, ready to face whatever awaited him. This night, marked by the relentless rain and the daunting presentation, was a defining moment, one that would shape the future of his business and his life. As the headlights sliced through the oppressive gloom, Robert meticulously reviewed every detail of his speech, imagining his partner's reactions with each point. However, as he halted at a red light, a scene on the sidewalk abruptly seized his attention and disrupted his focused reverie. Under the faint, flickering light of a street lamp, a sight pierced his heart with an overwhelming wave of compassion. A young woman, her face etched with the agony of desperation, crouched on the cold pavement, her fragile baby wrapped in a tattered blanket. She hunched over, desperately trying to protect her child from the unforgiving rain. The sight was profoundly moving, a stark reminder of the harsh realities outside his insulated world. An insistent voice within him urged, "Don't just drive by, you must help them." Robert shook his head, desperately trying to banish the intrusive thoughts from his mind. "It's pouring, and I really can't afford the time right now," he muttered to himself, his hand gripping the steering wheel with a slight tremble. Surely someone else will help them. The traffic light turned green, and he pressed the accelerator, attempting to leave the heart-wrenching image behind. But conscience is a tenacious adversary. The vision of the woman and her baby lingered, a relentless reminder in his rearview mirror of his own humanity and vulnerability. However, it wasn't long before a more menacing figure emerged from the shadows. A tall man, hood pulled low over his head, began to approach the woman with an air of threat. She tried to back away, but her foot caught on something, and she fell with a muffled scream, clutching her baby protectively. The sight was too much for Robert to ignore. He slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a halt, and he leaped out, no longer caring about the rain soaking through his clothes. The ominous figure, noticing Robert's approach, hesitated for a moment before retreating into the darkness, disappearing as swiftly as he had appeared. Robert hurried to the woman's side, immediately struck by the stark fear and vulnerability etched in her blue eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle as he extended a hand to her. She looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and relief at the sudden appearance of a stranger. "Yes, I think so," she replied, though her voice trembled as much as her soaked, shivering body. Robert's heart ached at the sight, and he felt a surge of protectiveness and urgency. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said, helping her to her feet. The rain continued to pour, but it seemed insignificant now compared to the human connection and the silent promise of compassion and aid that had been forged in the stormy night. His gaze fell on her knee, clearly injured and bent at an unnatural angle. "Your knee doesn't look good," he observed, his voice filled with concern. The woman sighed, her expression a mix of pain and resignation. "I heard it earlier today. That man chased me for nearly 2 blocks. I fell while trying to get away." "Do you know him?" Robert asked, his tone now laden with worry. She shook her head, holding the baby even closer. "No, I've never seen him before. I don't know what he wanted from me, from us." Robert felt a tightness in his chest upon hearing her words. He scanned the surroundings, ensuring the assailant was not lurking nearby, and made a swift decision. "Let's get you to the hospital. It's not safe to stay here." He gently helped her to her feet, supporting her as they made their way to his car. As he settled the woman and her baby into the passenger seat, the rain began to ease, as if even the sky was taking a moment to breathe. Robert knew his night was about to take a completely different turn from what he had planned, but a profound sense of purpose washed over him. He felt that this was exactly where he needed to be. The dim interior light of the car cast a soft glow on their faces. Robert could see the weariness etched in her features, the deep lines of worry and fatigue. Her baby, nestled against her chest, seemed oblivious to the turmoil, sleeping soundly despite the night's chaos. "I'll drive you to the nearest hospital," Robert said, his voice gentle yet resolute. "You need to get that knee looked at, and you both need to be somewhere safe." The woman nodded, a tear escaping down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't know what I was going to do." As Robert drove through the rain-slicked streets, he felt a profound connection to this stranger and her child. The night's darkness seemed less oppressive now, the rain less relentless. He knew that this unexpected encounter had changed something deep within him. For the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of purpose and clarity. He was not just a businessman on the brink of a significant presentation, he was a human being capable of compassion and action. With every mile, the tension in the car eased, replaced by a growing sense of hope. The city lights blurred by, each one a beacon guiding them to safety. Robert realized that sometimes the most important moments in life are not the ones meticulously planned, but the ones that happen unexpectedly, calling forth the best in us. As he drove towards the hospital, the woman began to introduce herself. "My name is Emily White," she said, her voice still shaky. "And this is Claire, my daughter." Robert nodded, a sign that he had listened, but his eyes remained fixed on the road ahead. The important meeting would have to wait. As the car glided through the now quiet streets after the rain, Robert tried to keep his focus on driving, but his attention was continuously drawn to the woman beside him. Emily held Claire close to her chest, the child's small head hidden under the blanket she used to shield her from the cold. "How did you end up on the street in this condition?" Robert asked, breaking the silence that had settled since they left the traffic light. Emily sighed deeply, her eyes fixed on the fogged window. "My life hasn't been easy," she began, her voice low and slightly trembling. "I grew up in an abusive home. My mother died when I was 10, and my father never got over the loss. He took his anger out on me. When Claire was born, I knew I had to escape. I couldn't let her grow up in that environment." Robert felt a pang in his heart as he listened to Emily's words. "You are very brave," he said, admiring the strength of this woman who, even under such adverse circumstances, struggled to give her daughter a better life. Emily continued, her voice gaining a bit of strength as she shared her story. "We've been moving from place to place, trying to stay under the radar. I've been working odd jobs to get by, but it's never enough. Tonight we were on our way to a shelter when that man started following us. I don't know what he wanted, but he seemed dangerous. All I could think about was protecting Claire." Robert's heart ached even more hearing the fear and determination in Emily's voice. He glanced over at Claire, who was now peeking out from under the blanket, her innocent eyes wide with curiosity and confusion. He felt a surge of protectiveness towards them both. "You're safe now," Robert assured her, his voice steady and comforting. "I'll make sure you get the help you need." As they approached the hospital, Robert's mind raced with thoughts of how he could assist them beyond just this night. He knew he couldn't just drop them off and walk away. This encounter had sparked something within him, a desire to make a meaningful difference in their lives. When they finally arrived, Robert parked the car and hurried to help Emily and Claire out. The rain had stopped completely, leaving a calm, damp stillness in the air. Robert supported Emily as they walked into the hospital, Claire clinging to her mother. The hospital staff quickly took over, guiding Emily and Claire to a waiting area. Robert stayed close, unwilling to leave until he was sure they were in good hands. He watched as a nurse gently examined Emily's knee and another offered Claire a warm blanket. Robert sat nearby, feeling a mixture of relief and determination. He knew that this unexpected detour had brought him face to face with a new purpose. He silently vowed to himself that he would do everything in his power to help Emily and Claire find stability and safety. As the night wore on, Robert and Emily exchanged more words, sharing pieces of their lives and dreams. Emily's gratitude was palpable, but Robert felt that it was he who had been given a gift, the chance to step outside his own world and make a real, tangible difference. By the time the first light of dawn began to creep through the hospital windows, Robert knew his life had been irrevocably changed. He had found a new direction, one guided not by business goals, but by the simple, profound act of helping those in need. Emily offered a faint smile, thanking him with a nod. "I just want Claire to have a chance to be happy, something I rarely had." Upon arriving at the hospital, Robert carefully helped Emily out of the car, holding Claire while she balanced on her injured knee. They walked to the emergency room entrance, where he explained the situation to the receptionist, who quickly summoned a nurse. As Emily was being attended to, Robert filled out the necessary forms and left clear instructions to use his credit card for any medical expenses. "Please make sure she and the baby receive everything they need," he told the nurse, his tone firm and concerned. The nurse, a middle-aged woman with a sympathetic look, nodded, touched by the man's evident care. "Don't worry, sir, we'll take care of them." Robert turned to Emily, who was seated in a wheelchair, Claire now sleeping serenely in her arms. "I need to go now, but I'll be back as soon as I can," he promised, feeling a strange reluctance to leave them. "Thank you for everything, Robert. I don't know what I would have done without your help today," Emily said, her blue eyes full of gratitude. He smiled, a nod that masked the complexity of emotions he felt. "Take care. I'll be back soon," he assured her, and with one last look at Claire, he returned to his car. As he drove back to his world of business and meetings, Robert couldn't help but reflect on the unexpected twists of life. The image of Emily and Claire remained vivid in his mind, a powerful reminder of the realities that often went unnoticed in his daily routine. As he parked the car at the building where the meeting awaited him, his phone rang with an urgent call from his assistant, Alyssa, who spoke rapidly. "Sir, everyone has arrived for the meeting. You are the only one missing." Robert took a deep breath, the weight of the night's events still heavy on his mind. "I'll be there in a moment, Alyssa," he replied, trying to shift his focus back to the task at hand. As he walked into the building, the hustle and bustle of the corporate world enveloped him. Colleagues greeted him with polite nods, unaware of the emotional journey he had just undertaken. He straightened his tie and took another deep breath before entering the conference room, where his partners and clients were already seated, waiting for him to begin. "Good morning, everyone," Robert said, his voice steady and composed. As he started the presentation, he found an unexpected clarity and purpose in his words. The night's events had shifted his perspective, grounding him in a way that added depth and authenticity to his delivery. He spoke with conviction, drawing from the well of compassion and determination he had tapped into earlier. Throughout the meeting, images of Emily and Claire flickered in his mind, a constant reminder of the importance of human connection and the impact of small acts of kindness. When the presentation concluded, Robert received enthusiastic applause and nods of approval from his colleagues and clients. Yet, his thoughts immediately drifted back to the hospital. As soon as the meeting ended, he hurried back to his car, eager to return to Emily and Claire. The drive back to the hospital felt shorter, fueled by a sense of urgency and commitment. When he arrived, he found Emily sitting up in bed, her knee bandaged, and Claire playing with a small stuffed toy the hospital had provided. "Robert, you came back," Emily said, her voice filled with relief and gratitude. "I told you I would," Robert replied, smiling warmly. "How are you feeling?" "Better, thanks to you," she said. "The doctors say I'll need some time to heal, but we'll be okay." Robert sat down beside her, feeling an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. "I'm glad to hear that. Let's figure out how we can get you and Claire settled. You don't have to face this alone anymore." As they discussed plans for the future, Robert realized that this unexpected encounter had irrevocably changed his life. He had found a new sense of purpose and direction, one that went beyond business success and into the realm of genuine human connection and support. The night that began with a daunting presentation had transformed into a journey of compassion and hope, illuminating the path ahead with a newfound clarity and resolve. "I'm already entering the elevator," Robert replied, hanging up shortly after. He took a deep breath, trying to mentally prepare for the transition from one world to another, but knowing that something inside him had irrevocably changed that rainy night. The elevator ascended slowly, the echo of Alyssa's hurried words still reverberating in Robert's mind. He adjusted his tie, a nervous gesture more out of distraction than necessity, as he tried to push away the persistent images of Emily and Claire. "Focus, Robert, business now," he murmured to himself, attempting to summon the coolness and concentration his position demanded. The sound of the elevator bell signaled his arrival at the correct floor, and he stepped out, his expression now hardened. Alyssa awaited him outside, clearly relieved to see him. "Sir, everyone is waiting. They have asked about you twice already," she said, her tone a mix of concern and relief. "Understood, Alyssa. Let's handle this now," he responded with a brief but decisive nod. They walked together down the polished corridor to the conference room, where a group of partners and investors were restlessly stirring. As he entered, all eyes immediately turned towards him, loaded with expectations and a hint of irritation. "Robert, where have you been?" "We are behind schedule," said one of the partners, a middle-aged man with a stern expression. "I apologize for the delay. I had an unexpected issue," Robert replied, keeping his voice steady and composed. "But I am here now, and we can begin. Let's focus on what's important." Without waiting for more questions, he moved to the head of the table, opened his laptop, and started his presentation. The slides projected on the wall displayed graphs and future projections, each meticulously prepared to persuade and convince. As he spoke, his mind occasionally drifted to Emily and Claire, but he used each memory as a catalyst to boost his performance. The meeting, initially tense due to his delay, gradually transformed. The expressions of those present softened, replaced by nods of agreement and murmurs of approval. Robert, with his usual skill, navigated through complex questions and hypothetical scenarios, defending his positions with the precision of an experienced strategist. Throughout the meeting, Robert felt a profound sense of clarity and purpose, each word he spoke underscored by the humanity he had reconnected with. He realized that his experiences from the night before had given him a renewed vigor, a deeper understanding of what truly mattered. By the time the meeting concluded, the tension in the room had dissipated entirely, replaced by a collective sense of optimism and direction. His partners and investors approached him with words of praise and satisfaction, acknowledging the strength and foresight in his presentation. Robert accepted their compliments with humility, his thoughts still partly with Emily and Claire. As he exited the conference room, Alyssa approached him with a relieved smile. "You were brilliant, as always," sir, she said, handing him a stack of follow-up documents. "Thank you, Alyssa," Robert replied, his tone sincere. "Could you also arrange a call with the hospital? I want to check on someone." "Of course, sir," she replied, her curiosity piqued but unvoiced. Returning to his office, Robert dialed the hospital and was relieved to hear that Emily and Claire were doing well. Emily's knee was being treated and Claire was safe and sound. The nurse informed him that they would need some time to recover, but they were in good hands. Hanging up the phone, Robert felt a profound sense of peace. He knew that helping Emily and Claire was just the beginning. He was determined to do more, to use his resources and influence to make a real difference in their lives and others in similar situations. That night had not only changed Emily and Claire's lives, but had also profoundly altered his own. It reminded him of the power of compassion and the importance of using one's capabilities to uplift others. He resolved to continue this newfound path, balancing his business acumen with a heart full of empathy and generosity. As the hours passed, the charged atmosphere gave way to a palpable feeling of accomplishment. When the last slide was presented and the final question answered, a respectful silence filled the room. It was Alyssa who broke the silence, her face lit up with a proud smile. "Congratulations, sir, for once again closing an incredible deal. It was exceptional, even with the delay." Robert nodded, allowing himself a brief moment of satisfaction before closing his laptop. "Thank you, everyone, for your patience and engagement. I appreciate the trust and assure you the results will speak for themselves." The partners stood up, approaching to shake hands and pat backs, each echoing Alyssa's sentiments. As the room emptied, Robert remained for a moment, his thoughts now entirely focused on the woman and child at the hospital. "Alyssa, could you please wrap things up here? I need to check on something before ending the day," he said, already heading towards the door. "Of course, sir." "All is well here," she replied as he hurried out, his mind already calculating how long it would take to return to the hospital. As he reached the parking lot of the building, Robert realized he couldn't simply return to his routine. Something about that rainy night had altered his perspective, and he knew he needed to see Emily and Claire again to ensure they were safe and well cared for. Driving through the city, now illuminated by the soft glow of evening lights, Robert felt a sense of urgency mixed with anticipation. The business meeting, though important, seemed to pale in comparison to the human connection he had experienced earlier. His thoughts raced with possibilities of how he could help Emily and Claire beyond just this night. Upon arriving at the hospital, Robert quickly made his way to the emergency room, where he found Emily sitting up in bed, her knee bandaged, and Claire playing with a small toy the hospital had provided. The relief in their faces upon seeing him was unmistakable. "Robert, you came back," Emily said, her voice filled with gratitude and a hint of disbelief. "I told you I would," he replied, smiling warmly. "How are you feeling?" "Better. Thanks to you," she said, her eyes welling up with tears. "The doctors say I'll need some time to heal, but we'll be okay." Robert sat down beside her, feeling an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. "I'm glad to hear that. Let's figure out how we can get you and Claire settled. You don't have to face this alone anymore." As they discussed plans for the future, Robert realized that his encounter with Emily and Claire had profoundly changed him. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and direction, one that went beyond his corporate ambitions. He was determined to use his resources to provide a stable and safe environment for them, and perhaps even extend his help to others in need. The evening grew late as they talked, and Robert felt a deep connection with Emily. Her strength and resilience inspired him, and he knew that their paths crossing was no mere coincidence. It was a call to action, a reminder of the power of kindness and compassion. Before leaving, Robert made sure Emily and Claire had everything they needed for the night. He promised to return the next day with more concrete plans and support. As he walked back to his car, the city's night sounds enveloping him, Robert felt a profound sense of peace and clarity. He knew that his life had taken a new direction, one guided by empathy and the desire to make a difference. The next morning, as the sun rose, Robert was already making calls, arranging for a more permanent solution for Emily and Claire. His mind was sharp, his heart open, and his resolve stronger than ever. The rainy night that had begun with uncertainty and apprehension had transformed into a journey of hope and purpose, illuminating a path filled with possibilities and the promise of change. As he drove back to the hospital, his phone rang several times, but he ignored it, focused on his new priority. As twilight began to cast its shadows across the city skyline, Robert gathered his partners and assistant Alyssa in the office to share the unexpected events that had delayed him earlier. Everyone settled around the large mahogany table, the remnants of the earlier tension still palpable in the air. I understand that my delay caused concerns, but I want to explain the reason, Robert began, his serious tone capturing everyone's attention. He recounted his encounter with Emily and Claire, the rush to the hospital, and how it all had impacted his perception of what really mattered. William, one of the senior partners, crossed his arms, clearly disapproving of Robert's decision. "You put the company's reputation at risk today, Robert, acting impulsively for strangers. That is reckless." Robert remained calm, holding William's gaze firmly. "I understand your concern, William, but I do not regret my decision. In moments like these, we need to remember that we are humans before we are businessmen." Alyssa, always the mediator, intervened gently. "Perhaps there is a lesson here. Generosity can also be a form of leadership." The room fell silent as her words hung in the air. Robert could see a shift in the expressions of his colleagues, some of them beginning to nod in agreement. "I believe that our actions today, small as they may seem, can set a powerful example," Robert continued. "Showing empathy and taking decisive action in moments of need can strengthen not only our community but also our company. Our reputation isn't just built on deals and numbers, but on the values we uphold." Margaret, another partner, spoke up. "I think Robert has a point. In an age where corporate responsibility is under scrutiny, our actions today could resonate far beyond the boardroom. It shows we care about more than just profits." William's stern expression softened slightly, though his arms remained crossed. "It's not that I disagree with the principle, but the execution was risky. However, I can see the value in what you're saying." Robert nodded. "I appreciate your understanding, William. Moving forward, we can find ways to balance our responsibilities to the company with our responsibilities to our fellow human beings. Today was a reminder of that balance." Alyssa, seeing the mood lift, added, "We can explore ways to incorporate community support into our business model. It could become a defining aspect of our brand." The partners exchanged looks of agreement, the tension in the room gradually dissipating. Robert felt a sense of relief, knowing that his message had been heard. As the meeting concluded, Robert stood up, his thoughts once again with Emily and Claire. "Thank you, everyone, for your understanding and support. Let's continue to build a company that we can all be proud of, one that reflects our shared values." Leaving the office, Robert felt a renewed sense of purpose. His drive back to the hospital was filled with a calm determination. Upon arriving, he found Emily and Claire resting, the worry lines on Emily's face softened by a sense of security. "Robert, you came back," Emily said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "I told you I would," he replied, sitting down beside her. "How are you feeling?" "Better, much better." "The doctors have been wonderful," Emily said, her eyes shining with relief. Robert took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day's events lift. "I've spoken with my partners, and we're going to find a way to help you and Claire. You don't have to worry anymore." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she reached out to take his hand. "Thank you, Robert. You've given us hope." As the night deepened, Robert knew that his journey with Emily and Claire was just beginning. The rainy night that had brought them together had transformed into a beacon of compassion and purpose, guiding him towards a future where empathy and business could coexist harmoniously. The other partners murmured among themselves, some agreeing with Robert, others still skeptical. Ultimately, the group decided to put the matter aside, prioritizing the continuity of the business. "Have a good weekend, everyone. See you Monday." Robert concluded, ending the meeting and the debate with a note of cordiality. The next day, with the morning light bathing the streets, Robert drove back to the hospital, anxious for news of Emily and Claire. His heartbeat quickened with a mix of hope and apprehension. Upon arriving at the reception, he was greeted with a polite smile from the receptionist, who promptly began to search for information in the system. "Sir, it appears that Emily White and the baby were discharged at the end of the night shift," the receptionist informed him, her voice neutral. Robert furrowed his brow, the news falling like a bucket of cold water on his expectations. Did they leave any contact, any address where they went, he asked, trying to hide the urgency in his voice. The receptionist checked again, her fingers agile on the keyboard. Unfortunately, there is nothing recorded here beyond the initial care. I'm sorry, I can't help more than that. Thanking her with a nod, Robert turned away from the counter, his mind swirling with unanswered questions. He walked slowly back to his car, each step echoing his growing sense of frustration and concern. As he drove back home, the reality of the situation began to settle in. Without any clues about the whereabouts of Emily and Claire and no immediate ways to locate them, Robert faced a weekend of uncertainties. Returning home, Robert couldn't shake the feeling of unease. He paced his living room, thinking about all the possible places they might have gone. He thought about the shelters in the area, the few friends Emily might have, and even considered contacting local authorities to see if they had any information. But each idea seemed to hit a dead end. Feeling restless, he decided to take a walk to clear his mind. The crisp morning air and the sounds of the city waking up around him did little to ease his anxiety. He replayed the events of the previous night over and over, wondering if he had missed any signs, any details that could help him find them. As he wandered through the park near his home, he noticed a community board filled with flyers and notices. One caught his eye. It was for a local support group for single mothers. The idea struck him like a lightning bolt. Maybe, just maybe, Emily had sought out similar resources. He quickly took a picture of the flyer with his phone, noting the meeting times and contact information. Determined, he called the number listed, hoping to find someone who could provide any information or assistance. The woman on the other end of the line, though helpful, hadn't seen Emily but promised to spread the word among the group's members. Robert spent the rest of the weekend visiting shelters and community centers, talking to anyone who might have seen Emily and Claire. Each conversation left him more disheartened, but not without a glimmer of hope. The people he spoke to were kind and understanding, promising to keep an eye out for the young mother and her baby. By Sunday evening, exhaustion settled over him like a heavy blanket. He returned home, sinking into his chair with a deep sigh. The weekend had passed in a blur of activity, yet he was no closer to finding them. However, the connections he had made and the community support he had witnessed gave him a renewed sense of purpose. Determined not to give up, Robert decided to use his resources to widen the search. He reached out to his network, enlisting friends and colleagues to help. He even considered using social media to share their story, hoping to reach a broader audience. As he prepared for bed, Robert felt a mixture of worry and resolve. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he was committed to seeing it through. The events of the past few days had changed him profoundly, reinforcing the belief that sometimes the most important actions come from the heart, not the boardroom. Lying in the dark, he thought about Emily's determination and Claire's innocent face. He whispered a silent promise to them both, vowing to continue the search and offer his help whenever and however he could. Upon entering his home, Robert immediately went to his office, rummaging through his bag in search of his cell phone to see if there was any missed call or message that could be a clue. However, when he tried to turn it on, he discovered that the device was completely discharged. With a sigh of frustration, he placed the cell phone on the charger, his gaze lost in the void as he pondered the next step. That night, as he dined alone, the restlessness and concern only grew, setting the stage for a long and agonizing weekend marked by the absence of news about Emily and Claire. As Saturday morning dawned, the sun barely starting to spread across the sky, Robert anxiously checked his phone, which had finally charged. His mind was turbulent with thoughts about Emily and Claire as he waited for the battery to gain enough life to turn on. As soon as the phone turned on, a series of notifications popped up on the screen, all indicating transactions made with the credit card he had left with Emily at the hospital. Robert scanned the amounts and descriptions of the purchases: high-end electronics, a large-screen television, and even a gaming console. His jaw tightened in frustration and disappointment. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The trust he had placed in Emily now seemed betrayed by the lavish spending reflected in these transactions. With each notification, his mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Had he misjudged her entirely? Was there another explanation? Determined to find answers, Robert called the hospital to check if they had any additional information about Emily's discharge. The receptionist confirmed that Emily and Claire had left late at night, but there was no further information on their destination. Feeling a mix of anger and confusion, Robert decided to track the purchases using the addresses provided for delivery. He spent the better part of the morning calling stores and speaking with customer service representatives, trying to gather any details he could. It wasn't long before he had a list of addresses where the items were supposed to be delivered. Driven by a need for answers, Robert set out to visit the first address. As he drove, his thoughts were a whirlwind of emotions. He couldn't reconcile the image of the desperate, grateful Emily he had met with the person now seemingly exploiting his generosity. The first address led him to a modest apartment complex. He approached the door with a mixture of hope and apprehension, knocking firmly. A middle-aged woman answered, looking surprised to see him. Robert quickly explained the situation, showing her the list of purchases and asking if she knew Emily. The woman shook her head. "I'm sorry, I don't know anyone by that name, and I definitely didn't order these things. You might want to check with the building manager." Disheartened but not deterred, Robert followed her advice. The building manager confirmed that no one by the name of Emily White or any recent occupants matching her description lived there. This left Robert more confused than ever. He continued to the next address on his list, a similar scenario unfolding. Each stop brought the same result: no sign of Emily, and no answers to his growing list of questions. By the end of the day, Robert felt exhausted and defeated, his initial anger now mingled with a deep sense of sadness. Returning home, Robert sat in his office, staring at the list of addresses and the unanswered questions they represented. He realized he needed a new strategy. Perhaps reaching out to the community organizations and shelters he had visited earlier could yield some information. He also considered involving the police, but hesitated, not wanting to escalate the situation without more evidence. As he mulled over his next steps, Robert's phone buzzed with a message. It was from Samuel, the lawyer, asking for an update. Robert replied briefly, explaining the day's fruitless search. Samuel's response was swift and supportive, suggesting they meet first thing Monday to discuss possible legal actions and other avenues to locate Emily and Claire. That night, Robert found sleep elusive. His mind replayed every moment he had spent with Emily and Claire, searching for any clues he might have missed. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, something that would explain the seemingly inexplicable actions. Sunday morning dawned with a sense of renewed determination. Robert resolved to keep searching, to leave no stone unturned in his quest for the truth. He knew that somewhere amidst the confusion and doubt, there had to be an answer. And he was determined to find it, for Emily, for Claire, and for his own peace of mind. So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next videos. Together, we will continue to share stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that binds us all. How could he murmured to himself, feeling a mix of anger and betrayal. Determined to clarify the facts, he donned his coat and left, heading to the electronics store where the purchases had been made. Upon arriving at the store, the atmosphere was bustling with customers exploring the latest technological innovations. Robert immediately approached the customer service desk, where a young employee greeted him with a polite smile. "Good morning, I need help with some suspicious transactions that were made here yesterday," Robert explained, showing the notifications on his phone. The employee, somewhat surprised by the situation, called the manager. "Let's check that for you, sir," said the manager, a middle-aged woman with a serious expression. "If you can give us a description of who made these purchases, we can start from there." Robert described Emily, and also mentioned the suspicious man he had seen the night of the encounter. The manager agreed to access the security camera recordings, and they headed to the back room where the monitors were kept. As the footage from the previous night appeared on the screen, Robert watched attentively, expecting to see Emily making the purchases. However, to his surprise and dismay, it was not Emily who appeared in the recording, but rather the man he had seen approaching her that rainy night. The man moved through the store aisles, selecting the most expensive items with an ease that irritated Robert. "That's him," Robert said, pointing at the screen. "That's the man who was threatening Emily." The manager nodded, her expression serious. "This explains a lot. He must have stolen the credit card information and used it for these purchases. Can you tell where he had the items delivered? Robert asked, his frustration mixed with a sense of urgency. The manager looked through the records and found the delivery address. Here it is, she said, handing Robert a printout. This is where the items were sent. Robert thanked her and quickly left the store, determined to follow this new lead. As he drove to the address, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and concern. The fact that Emily was not directly involved gave him some solace, but the presence of the man meant she was still in danger. The address led him to a rundown apartment building on the outskirts of the city. The neighborhood was rough, with graffiti on the walls and trash littering the streets. Robert parked his car and took a deep breath before stepping out. He knew this could be dangerous, but he had to find out more. He approached the building cautiously, looking around for any signs of the man. As he reached the door, he noticed it was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, he stepped inside and found himself in a dimly lit hallway. He could hear voices coming from one of the apartments. Following the sound, he reached a door and listened. The conversation inside was heated, and Robert recognized the voice of the man from the store. Carefully, he knocked on the door, hoping to catch them off guard. The door swung open, and the man from the video stood there, a look of surprise quickly turning to anger. "Who are you?" he demanded. "I'm the owner of the credit card you've been using," Robert replied, his voice steady. "Where is Emily?" The man's eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." Robert pushed past him into the apartment, where he saw the stolen items scattered around. "I know you took my card and made these purchases. Tell me where Emily and Claire are, or I'll call the police right now." The man's bravado faltered, and he glanced nervously towards a closed door at the back of the apartment. Robert's heart pounded as he moved towards it, ignoring the man's protests. He threw open the door and found Emily and Claire inside, looking scared but unharmed. "Robert," Emily exclaimed, rushing to him with Claire in her arms. "Thank God you're here." Robert hugged them both tightly. "You're safe now," he whispered, relief washing over him. Turning to the man, Robert's expression hardened. "The police are on their way. You're not getting away with this." The man slumped, knowing his game was up. Robert quickly called the police, explaining the situation. Within minutes, officers arrived and took the man into custody. As they left the apartment, Emily looked up at Robert, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Robert. I didn't know how to protect us." "It's okay," Robert replied, his voice gentle. "The important thing is that you're both safe now. We'll figure out the rest together." Driving back home with Emily and Claire, Robert felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had faced a frightening ordeal, but their bond had only grown stronger. Together they would overcome whatever challenges lay ahead. So if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next videos. Together, we will continue to share stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that binds us all. "That's the man," he pointed at the screen, anger rising within him. "But I don't see Emily with him. Were they together? Was it all a scam?" The manager paused the image, clearly showing the man's face. "We don't recognize him as one of our regular customers," she commented, "and we definitely didn't see the woman you described." Frustrated, but now with more questions than answers, Robert thanked the manager for her assistance and left the store. The possibility of having been deceived, of Emily possibly colluding with that man, gnawed at him internally. Yet something inside him still resisted believing that it was all just a ruse. As he drove away, Robert's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. He couldn't ignore the feeling that there was more to the story. Emily's fear and desperation had seemed so genuine. He decided to follow the address given by the store manager, hoping it would lead to some clarity. The address led him to a modest house in a quieter part of town. He parked a short distance away and approached cautiously. The house seemed unremarkable, with no signs of recent activity. Taking a deep breath, Robert knocked on the door. After a few moments, the door creaked open, revealing an elderly woman with kind eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked. "Good afternoon," Robert began, trying to sound calm. "I'm looking for a man who might be staying here. He was seen making purchases with my stolen credit card." The woman looked puzzled. "I'm sorry, but I live here alone. I haven't seen anyone fitting that description." Robert's heart sank. Is it possible he used this address for deliveries? The woman shook her head. "I suppose it's possible, but I haven't received any packages. Please, come in and look around if you'd like." Robert hesitated but decided to take her up on the offer. He stepped inside and glanced around. The house was neat and tidy, with no signs of anyone else living there. After a thorough check, he thanked the woman and left, feeling more confused than ever. As he sat in his car, trying to make sense of the situation, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He answered, hoping for a breakthrough. "Hello, Robert," a familiar voice said. It was Emily. "Emily, where are you?" What's going on? Robert's voice was a mix of relief and frustration. "I'm sorry for everything," Emily said, her voice trembling. "I had to leave the hospital quickly. That man, he's dangerous. He's been threatening me and Claire. I had no choice but to go along with his plan." "Why didn't you tell me?" Robert asked, his anger softening into concern. "I was scared," Emily replied. "I didn't want to drag you into this mess. But now, I realize I need your help. I can't do this alone." "Where are you?" Robert asked urgently. Emily gave him an address, a small motel on the outskirts of town. "Please hurry. I don't know how much time we have." Robert didn't waste a second. He started the car and sped towards the motel, determination fueling his every move. When he arrived, he found Emily and Claire in a small, dimly lit room. They looked exhausted and frightened. "Robert," Emily said, tears in her eyes, "thank you for coming." Robert hugged them both tightly. "We're getting out of here. I won't let him hurt you anymore." As they left the motel, Robert made a call to Samuel, the lawyer. He explained the situation and arranged for immediate legal protection for Emily and Claire. They drove to a safe house Samuel had prepared, a secluded location where they could stay while the authorities dealt with the man who had been terrorizing them. Over the next few days, Robert worked tirelessly with Samuel and the police to build a case against the man. Emily provided detailed information about the threats and the manipulation she had faced. Slowly, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. Throughout this ordeal, Robert's faith in Emily never wavered. He saw the fear in her eyes, the genuine concern for Claire's safety, and knew that she had been a victim, not a collaborator. Their bond grew stronger as they faced each challenge together. Eventually, the man was apprehended, and the charges against him were solid. Emily and Claire were safe, and the nightmare that had plagued them was finally over. As they settled into a new, secure home, Robert reflected on the journey they had taken. It had been filled with fear, uncertainty, and danger, but also with love, resilience, and hope. He knew that their story was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever came next, united and stronger than ever. So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next videos. Together we will continue to share stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that binds us all. Determined to uncover the whole truth, Robert decided that his next step would be to confront the man from the images directly if he could find him. With a copy of the security footage in hand and the image of the suspect etched in his mind, he got into his car, heading to the nearest police station to file a report and seek help from the authorities. Armed with the security footage and seething with a mix of determination and anger, Robert arrived at the local police station. The corridors were bustling, filled with the characteristic hum of a busy morning. He approached the reception desk, where a uniformed police officer greeted him with a look of professional caution. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, noting the tense expression on Robert's face. Yes, I need to report a fraud and possibly a case of manipulation. I believe this man, Robert said, handing over a copy of the security recording to the officer, is involved, and he might be trying to harm an innocent woman. The officer took the footage and examined it closely. Please have a seat, sir. I'll get an investigator to speak with you right away. Robert waited anxiously, the minutes feeling like hours. Finally, a detective named Harris approached him, extending a hand. Mr. Robert, I'm Detective Harris. Let's go to my office and discuss your case. They walked to a small, cluttered office where Robert recounted the entire story, his encounter with Emily and Claire, the suspicious man, the fraudulent transactions, and his search for answers. Detective Harris listened intently, nodding occasionally. You did the right thing coming to us, Mr. Robert. Based on your description and the footage, it appears this man is involved in a series of similar crimes. We have been trying to track him down for a while. Robert felt a surge of relief mixed with frustration. So, what's the next step? We will circulate this footage among our officers and put out an alert for the suspect, Harris replied. In the meantime, I recommend you stay in close contact with Emily and ensure her location remains confidential. We'll also provide protection if necessary. Thank you, Detective Robert said, shaking his hand. I just want to keep them safe and make sure this man is brought to justice. Leaving the police station, Robert felt a renewed sense of determination. He called Emily to update her, relieved to hear her voice. Robert, thank you for everything you're doing, Emily said, her voice filled with gratitude. I'm still scared, but knowing you're on our side helps a lot. We're going to get through this, Emily, Robert reassured her. I filed a report with the police, and they're taking this seriously. Just stay safe and keep me updated on any changes. Over the next few days, Robert remained in constant communication with Detective Harris. The police began to gather more information on the suspect, linking him to other cases of fraud and manipulation. Robert's cooperation provided crucial leads that helped the investigation gain momentum. One afternoon, Robert received a call from Harris. Mr. Robert, we've located the suspect. He was spotted at a known associate's residence. We're planning a raid tonight. Robert's heart raced. Do you need me to do anything? Just stay put and keep Emily informed. We'll handle this, Harris assured him. That evening, Robert anxiously waited for news. He kept his phone close, ready to relay any updates to Emily. Hours passed before Harris called back. The raid was successful. We've apprehended the suspect, Harris reported. He's in custody and will face multiple charges. Thanks to your help, we were able to act swiftly. Relief washed over Robert. Thank you, Detective. This means a lot. We're just doing our job, Harris replied. We'll keep you updated on the case. Meanwhile, ensure Emily and Claire remain safe. Robert immediately called Emily, sharing the good news. The police have arrested him. You're safe now. Emily's voice trembled with emotion. I can't believe it. Thank you, Robert. I don't know what we would have done without you. It's over now, Robert said softly. You can start to rebuild your lives without fear. In the weeks that followed, the legal proceedings against the suspect progressed. Emily and Claire gradually adjusted to their new, secure life, supported by Robert and the friends they had made along the way. Robert's bond with Emily deepened, their shared ordeal forging a connection that went beyond mere friendship. As they moved forward, they did so with the knowledge that they had faced and overcome a formidable challenge. Their story was one of resilience, determination, and the unbreakable spirit of people united by love and hope. So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next videos. Together, we will continue to share stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that binds us all. The officer reviewed the footage briefly and called in a detective. Robert explained the entire situation, from his encounter with Emily and Claire to the discovery of the fraudulent purchases. The detective, a middle-aged man with a penetrating gaze, listened attentively and agreed to help. "Let's see what we can do to locate this man. You said you have his address, right?" With assistance from the electronics store, Robert had obtained the address of the suspect, which was registered for the delivery of the purchased items. Armed with this information, Robert, the detective, and a team of police officers headed to the indicated area, a worn-down and impoverished neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Upon arrival, the detective coordinated a cautious approach. The narrow streets and dilapidated houses painted a picture of neglect. Robert felt growing tension, each step bringing them closer to the man he had seen in the security footage. Suddenly, as they turned a corner, Robert spotted the man. "There he is," he exclaimed, pointing. The suspect, realizing he was being watched, began to run. The officers sprang into action, chasing the man through the tight alleyways. After several tense minutes, they managed to apprehend him, handcuffing him as he struggled to break free. Back at the station, the man, who was identified as Marcos, was placed in an interrogation room. Robert watched through the one-way glass as the detective began the interrogation. "Why were you using someone else's credit card to purchase expensive items?" the detective asked, his voice calm yet authoritative. Marcos looked down, his hands trembling slightly. "It was Emily. She gave me the card, said I could use it to buy some things," he claimed, his voice faltering. Robert, listening from behind the glass, felt a wave of frustration and disbelief. He and the officers exchanged skeptical looks. "He's lying," Robert muttered to himself, almost unable to believe that Emily could be involved. But doubt began to set in, leaving an uncomfortable feeling. "Let's verify this story," the detective said, leaving the room to continue the investigation. Meanwhile, Robert sat in the waiting room of the station, his thoughts swirling. Everything seemed increasingly complicated, and he knew he needed to keep a cool head to uncover the truth. After the tumultuous interrogation, Robert felt powerless and confused. He decided to let the police and his lawyer, a competent professional named Samuel, handle the case. In the days that followed, he dove back into work, trying to push thoughts of Emily, Claire, and the mysterious Marcos from his mind. However, uncertainty continued to echo in his thoughts, a persistent shadow over his days. 2 weeks of restlessness and hard work passed when, on a quiet afternoon, Robert's cell phone vibrated with a call from an unknown number. He was in the middle of a meeting and ignored the call, assuming it could be a salesperson or some sort of spam. When the phone rang again, he silenced it without looking. The third time, curiosity and an inexplicable sense of urgency made him answer. "Hello," he spoke, his voice tinged with slight irritation from the interruption. On the other end, there was a pause, and then a female voice, tremulous and hesitant, spoke quickly. "I'm sorry I was forced to do this," said the voice. And before Robert could respond, the line was cut off, leaving a buzzing silence in his ear. Robert stood still, holding the phone to his ear, trying to process the words. Forced to do what he murmured to himself, perplexed. The voice seemed familiar, but the rapidity of the call left him doubting his own senses. Returning to the table, he stared at the cell phone display, hoping the person would call back, but the phone remained silent. Is this another trick, he thought, suspicion now a constant companion? Making a quick decision, he left the conference room and went straight to Samuel's office. "Samuel, I just received a strange call. A woman said she was forced to do this and then hung up. I need to find out if it was Emily. Can you trace the number?" Samuel, always pragmatic and efficient, nodded while already starting to type on his laptop. "Let's see what we can find out, Robert. These calls could be a breakthrough or a new layer of this confusion." As Samuel worked, Robert sat down, his mind racing. The uncertainty about the intention behind the call consumed him. If it was Emily, why would she call after all this time? And what had she been forced to do? The possibility that she might be in danger began to take shape in his mind, bringing with it a new sense of urgency. Samuel finally looked up, his expression serious. The number is from a public phone, which complicates things a bit, but it's located in an area close to where you said you first encountered Emily. It's worth investigating. With this new information, Robert felt a renewed determination. "Let's go then," he said, picking up his car keys. "If there's any chance this could lead us to Emily and clarify this whole situation, then I need to check it out personally." They left the office, the sky already darkening as they headed to the location of the phone booth, each lost in their thoughts about what they might discover when they arrived there. Robert and Samuel arrived at the location where the phone booth was situated, a dark corner on a poorly lit street. The public telephone, an almost forgotten relic of urban communication, seemed an anachronistic point in the modern landscape. "I'll try calling the number back," Robert said, pulling out his cell phone. His fingers hesitated for a moment before dialing the number from the received call. As the phone rang, he felt a mix of hope and apprehension. Finally, the call was answered. "Hello, is this you, Emily? If that is your real name," Robert said, his voice tinged with suspicion. There was a pause on the other end, then a tearful and clearly distressed voice responded, "Yes, it's me, Robert. I'm so sorry for everything. I was forced to give the card to Marcos. He's a loan shark. He was threatening me and my daughter. I tried to escape, but he found us." Robert's heart raced as he heard the confirmation of his suspicions and fears. "Emily, where are you now? I need more details. How did he find you, and how did he threaten you?" She sobbed before responding, her voice still shaky. "I'm hiding now. He found me a day after I left the hospital. Marcos knew where I used to go. He forced me to give him the card, saying that if I didn't, something bad would happen to Claire." Emily's anguish was palpable, even through the distance. "Please, Robert, you need to believe me. I'm sending you the address where I am now. You can come and check my documents, see for yourself who I am." Robert quickly noted down the address Emily provided. "I'm on my way. Stay where you are and don't talk to anyone else about this," he instructed, while Samuel, who was beside him, listened intently. As soon as he hung up, Robert turned to Samuel. "She's in danger, Samuel. We need to help her." Samuel nodded, his expression grave. "I'll contact the police to make sure we have support. We don't know what kind of situation we're going to find." Together, they returned to the car and drove to the address provided by Emily. The journey was silent, both men lost in their thoughts about the possible implications of what they were about to discover. Upon arriving at the location, a worn-down building in an even more forgotten area of the city, Robert felt a knot form in his stomach. "I hope we're still in time," he murmured as they climbed the steps to the indicated apartment. Robert knocked on the door, his heart pounding with anticipation and fear. Moments later, the door slowly opened, and Emily appeared, visibly shaken but alive. She quickly let them in, looking nervously down the hallway before closing the door. Inside the apartment, Robert could see documents scattered over a small dining table, evidence of Emily's life, perhaps enough to clarify everything. But before they could talk further, Robert's phone rang again, interrupting the moment. It was his lawyer with urgent news about Marcos. In the days following the visit to Emily's apartment, Robert and Samuel worked tirelessly to unravel each piece of the puzzle that involved Emily's life. The urgency of the situation motivated them at every step as they awaited the promised information from Robert's lawyer. Finally, on a humid and stuffy afternoon, Robert's phone rang. It was his lawyer, Thomas, whose tone of voice indicated both relief and concern. "Robert, I have good news and some important confirmations," Thomas began. We have managed to verify Emily's identity through a series of documents and records. She is indeed who she says she is, Emily White, daughter of Edward White. And her father has a disturbing history, with several assault complaints registered against him. Robert felt a mix of relief and anxiety upon hearing these words. This explains a lot, Thomas, but it also increases my concern for her and little Claire's safety. We need to act quickly. I fully agree, Thomas replied. I will continue to investigate and keep you informed of any developments. After hanging up, Robert grabbed his cell phone with renewed determination. He dialed Emily's number, hoping to speak with her about the findings and discuss the next steps to ensure her safety. The phone rang several times before Emily finally answered. Robert, her voice sounded cautious and slightly tremulous. Emily, it's me. I received some important information from my lawyer that we need to discuss. Are you in a safe place right now? Robert asked, his voice laden with concern. Before Emily could respond, a loud bang interrupted the conversation. Robert heard the sound of something heavy hitting what seemed to be a door. Emily, what's happening there? He exclaimed, his heart racing with fear of what that might mean. Robert, Emily began, but was interrupted by another bang, followed by muffled screams. The phone fell, and the sound of fighting and confusion took over the environment. Emily, Robert shouted into the phone, unable to do more than listen. The sound of a door being broken down and more screams filled his ears, increasing his desperation. Not knowing what else to do, Robert rushed to his car, the phone still pressed to his ear, listening to the sounds of a fight that seemed to grow more violent. As he drove back to Emily's apartment, he tried to remain calm, but fear and worry dominated his thoughts. Approaching the location, the sound of sirens could already be heard in the distance. The call was still connected, but only indistinct noises and occasional words from Emily could be heard. Robert parked the car hastily and ran towards the building, hoping to find Emily safe but fearing the worst. Robert raced down the hallway of Emily's building, the phone pressed against his ear as he listened to the sounds of struggle and desperation from the other side of the line. Did Marcos go after her? He shouted to the lawyer, who was still on the phone, trying to coordinate a response with the police. He escaped custody a few days ago, the lawyer said, his voice tense, conveying the gravity of the situation. Sorry, Robert, I didn't think it was important to inform you earlier. We didn't think he would attempt something so direct. This is crucial, Thomas. We need the police now, Robert exclaimed as he climbed the stairs, taking two at a time. I'm heading to her apartment. Do whatever you can to bring help. As soon as he reached Emily's floor, Robert headed to her apartment, his heart pounding furiously in his chest. The hallway was eerily silent, but the muffled sounds of fighting still came through the phone, giving him an even greater sense of urgency. He reached the door, which was ajar, a clear sign of forced entry visible on the damaged lock. Emily, he called out as he pushed the door open and entered. The apartment was in disarray, furniture overturned, and personal items scattered across the floor. The sound of a struggle came from the bedroom at the end of the hallway. Robert advanced through the apartment, his heart loud in his ears as he approached the bedroom. The sounds of fighting intensified. With a push, he opened the bedroom door and saw Emily struggling to free herself from a man that Robert immediately recognized as Marcos. Let her go, Robert shouted, moving in to intervene. Marcos, surprised by the sudden interruption, released Emily and turned to face Robert. You shouldn't be here, Marcos growled, positioning himself defensively. Emily, trembling and with tears in her eyes, retreated to a corner of the room, watching the scene with evident terror. Without hesitation, Robert advanced on Marcos, using all the adrenaline the moment demanded. They fought, a tense physical confrontation that knocked more furniture around as they struggled. Robert managed to land a blow that caused Marcos to stumble backward, crashing against the wall. "Robert." "I'm okay," Emily managed to say, her voice a tremulous whisper. At that moment, the sounds of approaching sirens could be heard in the distance. The police, finally alerted by the lawyer, were arriving. Robert kept Marcos subdued, waiting for the police to enter and take control of the situation. As he held Marcos, relief at having arrived in time mixed with anger over the danger Emily and Claire had faced. He knew the next few hours would be crucial to ensure Marcos no longer posed a threat. "It's all right now, Emily. It's all right," Robert repeated, trying to calm both himself and her as the police finally burst through the apartment, ready to take charge of the situation. Robert's heart raced frantically as he drove at high speed through the nearly empty streets, each traffic light and curve intensifying the tension that already consumed him. The urgency to reach Emily's apartment before something worse happened propelled him, making him almost completely ignore the speed limits. As soon as he arrived at the building, he parked the car with a jolt and ran out, not even bothering to lock the door. Adrenaline pulsed through his veins as he crossed the lobby and climbed the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time, not waiting for the elevator. Each step was guided by the sound of Emily's despair, still echoing in his mind. Reaching the hallway of her apartment, Robert saw the door ajar. Without hesitation, he entered, his heart pounding against his chest. Inside the apartment, the sounds of struggle were clear and directed Robert straight to Emily's bedroom. There, he found Marcos trying to force his way into the room where Emily was evidently locked in. Without a second thought, Robert yelled, "Marcos, step away from her, now." Surprised by Robert's sudden arrival, Marcos turned around with an expression of fury. "This is none of your business, Robert," he growled, advancing towards Robert with brutal determination. Although not a professional fighter, Robert had trained in some forms of personal defense and was prepared to use all his skills. He positioned himself defensively, sizing up his opponent, and when Marcos charged, Robert used Marcos's own momentum against him, dodging and applying an arm lock that brought him to the ground with a grunt of pain. "She will never be your property, Marcos." "This ends now," Robert shouted, keeping Marcos immobilized on the ground. At that moment, the police, alerted by Samuel, finally arrived, storming into the apartment with quick and firm steps. They quickly assessed the situation and handcuffed Marcos, who still tried to struggle. With Marcos now under police custody, Robert turned to the bedroom door, which was locked. "Emily, it's me, Robert. It's all safe now. You can open the door." There was a pause, and then the sound of locks being undone. The door slowly opened, and Emily appeared, visibly shaken, her eyes red and swollen from tears. Upon seeing Robert, she ran to him, embracing him tightly. "Robert, I don't know what I would have done without you. Thank you for not giving up on me," she sobbed, clinging to him as if she never wanted to let go. Robert comforted her, holding her tightly. "You'll never have to face something like this alone again, Emily. We'll make sure he can't hurt you again," he promised, feeling a mix of relief and anger, thinking about the terror she had endured. As the police began to ask questions and process the scene, Robert stayed by Emily's side, ensuring she felt safe and protected. However, despite the immediate relief, he knew there were still challenges ahead. They would need to face the legal and emotional consequences of what had happened. In the days following the confrontation with Marcos, Emily's life began to take a new direction under Robert's protection and care. Although the trauma of the incident still loomed over her like a shadow, Robert's constant and reassuring presence offered a counterpoint of safety and comfort. Robert became a constant figure in Emily's apartment, helping her to rebuild not just the physical space that had been damaged, but also the confidence she needed to move forward. He brought in painters and carpenters, transforming the formerly somber environment into a warm and bright home. "How are you feeling today?" Emily, Robert would ask during one of his daily visits, while Claire played with a new set of toys on the living room floor. "A bit better, Robert. Seeing the apartment transform helps me believe that things can really change for the better," Emily would respond, offering him a shy smile, which Robert returned with affection. As the weeks passed, Robert and Emily began to go out together, initially to open and calm spaces like parks and gardens, where Claire could play while they talked about everything except the recent trauma. It was during these outings that Robert realized how much his affection for Emily had grown, a feeling that began to intertwine with his admiration for her strength and resilience. "You're incredible, Emily, not just for everything you've gone through, but for the way you're rebuilding your life," Robert confessed on a sunny afternoon as they watched Claire chase butterflies. Emily blushed slightly, touched by his words. "I couldn't have done it without you, Robert. You came at just the right time and changed everything for the better." Despite the growing romantic atmosphere, Robert knew that Emily's recovery journey was far from over. They faced legal challenges, with the case against Marcos still ongoing, and regular visits to the therapist to help Emily cope with the trauma. "Every day is a step forward, Emily, and I'll be here with you at every step," he promised, holding her hand as they walked back home after a day outdoors. However, despite the new beginnings and the growing bond between them, the reality of legal and emotional complications sometimes cast a shadow over their moments of happiness. As they prepared to face the next chapter of their lives, Robert knew the path ahead would still demand a lot from both of them. It was a quiet afternoon, and as Claire slept after a long day of play, Robert and Emily sat together on the couch, sharing a moment of silence. Robert's phone rang, breaking the calm of the moment. It was his lawyer, with news about the case against Marcos, a conversation they knew to be inevitable, but still hesitated to begin. As the days passed, Robert and Emily worked together on rebuilding her life, striving to leave the remnants of the trauma behind. Using his extensive resources and contacts, Robert found a new apartment for Emily and Claire in a safer, more tranquil area of the city. The move was not just physical, it represented a fresh start, a chance to begin anew with greater security and hope. "Look, Emily, this place has 24-hour security and a beautiful park right next door. Claire is going to love it," Robert explained as they toured the new apartment. The freshly painted walls and spacious rooms, bathed in sunlight, brought a glimpse of a brighter future. Emily looked around, holding Claire's hand, her eyes lighting up a bit as she imagined a life without constant fear. "It's perfect, Robert. I don't know how to thank you for everything you're doing for us," she said, her voice laden with gratitude. "You don't need to thank me, Emily. Seeing you two safe and happy is all I need," Robert replied, genuinely pleased to be able to help. Despite these promising new beginnings, the threat of Marcos and his connections still cast a shadow over the new life they were trying to build. During a quiet afternoon, while they were organizing some of Emily's belongings in the new apartment, Robert received a call from his lawyer that made his heart stop. "Robert, we have a problem," the lawyer said as soon as Robert answered the phone. "It seems Marcos was not acting alone. He had allies, and our information suggests they are not pleased with his arrest. They might try something against Emily to get revenge or to try to intimidate her before the trial." Robert's blood ran cold at these words. He looked at Emily, who was playing with Claire, completely unaware of the new threat. "What can we do? We need to protect them," he asked, his voice tense. "I'm working with the police to enhance security around Emily and Claire. Additionally, I recommend that we consider additional personal protection measures for them. It might be prudent to hire private security until this is resolved," the lawyer suggested. Robert immediately agreed, determined to do whatever was necessary to ensure Emily and Claire's safety. "Please organize that and keep me informed of any developments." Hanging up the phone, Robert approached Emily, his expression serious. "Emily, we need to talk. There's a new situation we need to discuss," he began, preparing to explain the new threat looming over them. Together, they spent the afternoon planning how to deal with this new threat, determined to protect the peace they were trying so hard to rebuild. The conversation was grave and necessary, a mix of precautions and promises as they planned how to keep their small, rebuilt family safe. As the sun set, bringing twilight to the end of the day, Robert felt a mix of determination and apprehension. He knew that despite the challenges, he would not give up on fighting for Emily and Claire's safety and happiness. The shadow of Marcos and his allies would not darken the future they were trying to build together. Emily and Claire's life began to stabilize, thanks to Robert's unwavering support. He not only secured a safe home for them, but also endeavored to help Emily find a job that met her financial needs and gave her a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Robert utilized his extensive network of professional contacts to find suitable opportunities for Emily, ensuring she could work in a safe and welcoming environment. "How did the interview go today?" Emily Robert asked during a quiet dinner in their new home. Claire played on the floor beside them, a joyful smile lighting up her face as she stacked colorful wooden blocks. Emily looked at Robert, her eyes sparkling with a mix of gratitude and hope. "It was amazing, Robert. The manager seemed really impressed with my experience, and the work environment is so welcoming. I think I'm going to really enjoy working there," she shared, the emotion evident in her voice. Robert smiled, pleased. "I knew you would impress them. You have so many skills and so much to offer, Emily. I'm so happy for you." As the days passed, Robert and Emily spent more and more time together, not just sharing responsibilities for Claire, but also exploring new hobbies and interests together. Whether visiting a new museum, watching a movie, or just walking through the local park, each moment together strengthened the bond between them. One afternoon, as they watched Claire play in the park, Robert took Emily's hand. "You know, Emily, I never imagined my life would change so much in such a short time. Since you and Claire came into it, everything seems brighter, more complete," he confessed, looking into her eyes. Emily squeezed Robert's hand, her heart warmed by his words. "I feel the same, Robert. You brought us safety and joy. I don't know how we would have done it without you," she replied, her voice gentle. The conversation continued, with both sharing dreams and plans for the future, imagining all the possibilities that now seemed within reach. However, even with a growing sense of normality and happiness, Robert remained vigilant, always alert to any signs of danger. He was determined to protect Emily and Claire at all costs, never forgetting the threats that might still be lurking. As they planned a small picnic for the following weekend, Robert thought about how to further strengthen security around them. "Maybe we should consider some personal safety classes, just to be prepared," he suggested, ever thoughtful. Emily agreed, recognizing the prudence in Robert's suggestion. "I think that would be a good idea, especially to feel more confident and protected," she said, appreciating Robert's constant concern for their safety. That evening in the park was one of many moments that marked the beginning of a new phase in their lives. With each passing day, the shadow of the past became less intimidating, replaced by the light of a promising future they were building together, one day at a time. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Robert, Emily, and Claire settled into a tranquil routine, life filled with small pleasures and daily discoveries. They established a routine that interwove their lives in such a way that each day seemed to bring a new reason to be thankful. Claire was growing quickly, her laughter the soundtrack of their days, and her insatiable curiosity the spark for many family adventures. One serene afternoon, as they sat in their garden watching Claire play, Robert held Emily's hand. "Can you believe how much our lives have changed?" he asked, a warm smile on his lips. Emily looked at him, her eyes shining with a mix of gratitude and love. "Sometimes it feels like a dream, one that I never want to end," she replied, squeezing his hand. "You've transformed our lives, Robert, in ways I never imagined possible." It was true. What had begun as a compassionate gesture on a rainy night had evolved into a deep emotional connection. They had woven a tapestry of life together that neither had anticipated, but now neither could imagine any other way. "I will always be here for you two, no matter what happens. We will face anything together," Robert said, determined. Emily nodded, knowing that with Robert by her side, she could face anything. As the sun set, painting the sky with vibrant colors, a figure approached their home's gate. It was Samuel, the lawyer, with a solemn expression that immediately made Robert stand up. "Robert, Emily, sorry to interrupt, but we need to talk," Samuel began, looking seriously at both of them. "I received a call from the police. There's news about Marcos, and apparently something you need to know." Robert and Emily exchanged a concerned look, each feeling a twinge of anxiety about what was to come. "What happened?" Samuel, Robert asked, his tone steady. "Marcos, he made a full confession. But it's not just about the crimes we knew," Samuel explained, pausing to ensure he had their attention. "He revealed he was being manipulated, part of a larger scheme that involves some quite influential people in the city. And Emily, it seems your father was involved." The shock of this revelation hit Emily like a physical blow. "My father? But how?" He never mentioned. Samuel took a deep breath before continuing. "Emily, your father was deeply entangled with these influential figures. According to Marcos, your father was coerced into certain actions under significant pressure, and his refusal to comply led to severe consequences. Marcos was one of many pawns in this elaborate game." Emily's mind raced, trying to process the information. "My father always seemed so strong, so unyielding. How could he have kept this from me?" Robert put a reassuring arm around her, his presence a steadying force. "We will get to the bottom of this, Emily, together." Samuel nodded, appreciating Robert's support. "The police are still investigating, but Marcos's confession has opened a Pandora's box of corruption and manipulation. It's going to be a long and arduous process, but we will uncover the truth." Emily took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "If my father was involved, there must be more to the story. I need to know everything." "We will," Robert assured her. "We'll dig through every piece of information until we have all the answers." As they discussed their next steps, the gravity of the situation settled in. They were not only facing the aftermath of Marcos's crimes, but also unraveling a deeper conspiracy that touched the core of Emily's family. The sun had long set by the time they finished their conversation with Samuel, the stars now visible in the clear night sky. Emily looked up, feeling a mix of apprehension and determination. "I can't believe my father was part of this. But we will get through it, Robert. I trust you." Robert squeezed her hand. "And I trust you, Emily. We're in this together, no matter what." As they prepared for the challenges ahead, they knew their bond would be tested, but their commitment to each other and their quest for the truth would guide them through the darkness. Their journey, fraught with peril and uncertainty, was also filled with the promise of uncovering the reality behind the shadows that had haunted Emily's past. So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next videos. Together we will continue to share stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that binds us all. Yes, it seems he was deep in debt with some dangerous people. Marcos was being used to pressure you, to manipulate situations that benefited your father without your knowing, Samuel continued, each word weighing in the air. Emily's past, which they thought they had left behind, had resurfaced with a twist none of them expected. What had started as a redemption story now intertwined with a plot of deeper intrigues and mysteries. The shadows of her history loomed large, casting doubts and fears over their newfound hope. Robert squeezed Emily's hand, reaffirming his silent commitment to face any challenges that came their way. "What does this mean for us?" Emily asked, her voice shaky with uncertainty. "We'll find out together," Robert responded, his determination clear and unwavering. Nothing will tear us apart. Thus, amid startling revelations, Robert, Emily, and Claire prepared to face the ramifications of this new threat, united and resilient. Their story was far from over. Each new page promised struggles, but also unshakable hope and love. They now knew that no matter what fate held, they would face it together as a family. The days that followed were filled with intense discussions and strategic planning. Robert and Emily spent hours with Samuel, piecing together the fragments of information that emerged from Marcos's confession. Each revelation brought them closer to understanding the full extent of the conspiracy, but also deeper into the web of deceit that had entangled Emily's father. Despite the gravity of their situation, Robert and Emily found strength in each other and in the innocent presence of Claire. Their evenings, though heavy with worry, were also filled with moments of tenderness and solidarity. They read bedtime stories to Claire, shared quiet conversations over cups of tea, and reaffirmed their commitment to each other and their future. One evening, as they sat together in the dim light of their living room, Robert spoke with a quiet resolve. "Emily, we need to be prepared for anything. This could get more complicated before it gets better, but I promise you we'll face it all together." Emily nodded, her eyes reflecting both fear and determination. "I know, Robert. I believe in us. We'll find a way through this." Their resolve was tested as new threats emerged. Anonymous messages and veiled warnings reminded them of the dangerous forces at play. Yet, each challenge only strengthened their resolve to protect their family and uncover the truth. Robert's business acumen and strategic thinking, combined with Emily's resilience and courage, made them a formidable team. They began to unravel the connections between the influential figures who had manipulated Marcos and the debts that had ensnared Emily's father. With Samuel's legal expertise guiding them, they slowly built a case that could expose the corruption and bring justice. Through it all, Claire remained a beacon of hope. Her laughter and innocence provided a constant reminder of what they were fighting for. They knew that their journey was far from over, but their love and determination would carry them through. As they stood on the threshold of an uncertain future, Robert, Emily, and Claire faced it with unyielding hope and unity. They had become more than just a family. They were a testament to the power of love and resilience in the face of adversity. So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next videos. Together, we will continue to share stories of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable spirit that binds us all. As they braced for the challenges ahead, their bond grew stronger, fortified by the trials they had already overcome and the faith they had in each other. With every step forward, they vowed to protect one another, to fight against the darkness that sought to encroach upon their light. Their journey had become a testament to the power of perseverance, compassion, and unity. It reminded them and those around them that even in the face of adversity, love could forge a path through the most daunting of trials. They faced each day with renewed determination, knowing that their collective strength and unwavering support for one another would see them through. Every shared smile, every reassuring touch, and every word of encouragement strengthened their resolve. They were no longer just a family bound by circumstances, but a formidable force united by love and purpose. Their story was one of resilience and hope, an inspiring beacon for all who knew them. In the face of the unknown, Robert, Emily, and Claire stood tall, ready to confront whatever fate had in store. Their hearts beat as one, their spirits intertwined in an unbreakable bond. They knew that together they could weather any storm, overcome any obstacle, and emerge stronger than ever before.